afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Bonnie Watson Coleman. I represent the small but mighty state of New Jersey, and I am the chair of this immensely important emergency task force. I want to thank those individuals who are here today who are going to present to us. We're so excited to hear from you. I want to thank my colleague Stephen Horsted from Nevada's 4th District for being here. And I want to take note of both Dr. Michael Lindsay and Dr. Herb Conaway, members of our work group, are also here. There may be other members of our work group?
Yes.
Hi. Dr. Prim? I'm sorry, Dr. Prim. I'm so delighted that you all are here because you're helping us get through this as an emergency and temporary task force, and a lot of this work is going to fall on you in terms of helping us with the report. So thank you and God bless you. Over the past few months since this task force was launched in April, we've attempted to chart a course guided by mental health professionals and academics to understand the scope and underlying causes for the mental health crisis among Black youth. Some of these are easy to identify, such as a lack of access to providers and a pervasive and destructive stigma in seeking professional care. Others aren't as simple, and the environment of social media in which our young people live right now is one example. Tools like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram have made our society more interconnected than ever, speeding our access to news, keeping us in touch with distant family members, and giving us firsthand insight into the lives of others. Unfortunately, these platforms also facilitate the spread of false information. They paint distorted, rose-colored pictures that set unrealistic expectations, and they open the door to scrutiny and bullying that is vicious and often anonymous. Today's forum will help us understand the landscape of this digital world and its impact on Black youth mental health. We have a lot to discuss and unpack today, so we want to get right into the introduction of our illustrious panel. With us today, Jasmine Pierre is the creator and CEO of the free minority-focused mental health app, The Safe Place. She is also a certified peer support specialist, mental health advocate, speaker, and the author of the self-help book, A Fight Worth Finishing. Jasmine is invested in the fight for the rights of those who battle mental health challenges. Dr. Rendisha. You know what? I had that right at home. Times is an associate professor of education and psychology and founding director of the Center for Empowering Learning and Development with Technology at the University of Southern California. Her research for the past 18 years has focused on the racial landscape adolescents navigate in online settings, online racial discrimination, and the design of digital tools that empower youth of color. A recipient of numerous fellowships and awards and recognitions, your work has been cited in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Newsweek, and several other outlets. Inspired by findings from your research, Times created Rate My Media, the first crowdsourced ratings app to promote equity and inclusion in educational technology and entertainment. And you are here today thanks to the support of the Steve Fund, another organization working tirelessly to improve health among people of color. And finally, we have a unique experience here today with Ms. Unique Jones Gibson. Gibson is a social activist who develops award-winning campaign and products that ignite conversation, introspection, and social change. She began her career with Microsoft in online advertising and has spent the last decade creating groundbreaking campaigns and working with companies like American Family Insurance, Nickelodeon, Kodak Digital, the Oprah Winfrey Network, and Custom Inc., among others. In 2013, Gibson launched Because of Them, We Can, an award-winning campaign and platform that reaches millions of people monthly as it uplifts and amplifies positive news. This is a certainty that we got the right people here to talk about this issue in this space today. I want to start by asking you if you have a 5-minute or less opening statement that you'd like to share with us. And also, we will have members coming in and out. This is a kind of busy season. Some people in this administration keep us really busy doing things, and so here we are, though. So I think we're going to start with Ms. Pierre.
Can you hear me? Oh, yes, I can hear myself. I would first like to start off by thanking Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, the entire CBC task force, and representatives for letting me speak today. I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear. This quote is from Rosa Parks. I'm working hard on what must be done and not being fearful of it, because the lack thereof is killing Black youth. To understand the present age of how media and technology can impact the mental health of Black youth in both positive and negative ways, I feel I must dig deeper first and address how we got here in the first place before media and technology became so big. We are now in a national crisis when it comes to Black youth attempting or ending their lives by suicide. But this crisis, reaching the peak it has, unfortunately, is unsurprising to me, because racial trauma that also led to generational trauma has been going on in our community since the beginning of time. When our ancestors were stolen and put on slave ships, when they got to America, if they even showed signs of mental health issues during slavery, they would just be beaten severely. So our ancestors were literally beaten into silence about their mental health issues, and that has continued to be passed down to the other generations of the Black community. We also can't forget Jim Crow, the Civil Rights era, lynchings, police brutality, and all of the other horrible tragedies that the Black community has endured in America that have severely impacted our mental health. We've been expected to be strong and just get over the racial trauma we've endured by so many people. So it makes me wonder why we tell each other the same inaccurate statements such as get over it and just be strong when it comes to talking about our mental health. I am a product of generational trauma when it comes to not talking about mental health issues in the Black community. Stress and mental health related issues have ran in my family for a long time, but I never really knew that fully until I was an adult. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and that is where some of my childhood trauma started. I didn't want to admit this to myself for years, but my mental health issues truly did start when I was just a little girl, and it progressed in my teens. The Black community has always been taught that strength is holding in all of your pain and working yourself to death, instead of being taught that we have strength in the wellness of our mental health by allowing ourselves to express emotions and receive mental health support when we need it. I graduated from Central, the same high school of the late and great Muhammad Ali in 2007 in Louisville, Kentucky. That same summer after graduation was my first time attempting suicide at only 18 years old. But I started having thoughts about suicide as young as 9 or 10 years old. My first suicide attempt actually occurred just before social media, smartphones, and apps really took off, because I'm 30. And I was already extremely depressed, anxious, and had no idea how badly my mental health had really declined, because the hospital I was sent to sent me home the very next day and didn't make too much of a big deal out of what happened to me. I didn't even get diagnosed with depression until 2 years after that, at the age of 20, when I moved back home to New Orleans after another suicide attempt. I feel it's really sad that it had to take me trying to kill myself twice in my youth before I was even given a diagnosis. Had I been taught more about mental health support in the Black community in my youth, things could have been different for me. This healthcare system definitely needs to do a better job when it comes to paying attention to minorities and mental health related issues. From the age of 18 to 25, I continued to work and go to college after my diagnosis. I just kept brushing off my suicide attempts and acted like they never even existed, because I was taught Black people didn't really go through mental health issues anyways. And that was the way of thinking that made my depression and anxiety take a turn for the worse. In November of 2014, I majorly overdosed and nearly killed myself again. And after that ordeal, I finally came to terms with my mental health issues, but because I hadn't gotten the proper mental health care as a child or even as an adult, my mental health started declining more and more, and I still didn't realize it. I haven't been able to work in a regular job setting for 5 years because my depression and anxiety makes it very difficult for me to concentrate and thrive in certain environments. My mental health has also seriously taken a health toll on my body. As I said before, I'm only 30, but sometimes I feel like I'm 60 years old because I'm always experiencing aches and pains in my joints, and it's due to stress. Stress-related strokes also run in both parts of my family. So I fear sometimes that stress will be the thing that actually takes me out instead of just suicide alone. I used to be ashamed to tell people all of this, especially in my adolescence. But it's my truth, and I've decided to fight the system for proper mental health care for my community, myself, and especially the youth. Because I don't want the Black youth of this generation to continue to go through what I'm going through. Black youth who have mental health issues that are never properly treated can end up attempting suicide multiple times, develop unhealthy addictions, or they can even become Black adults like me, who have tried so hard to deny their mental health issues for years and didn't receive proper mental health care. We don't deal with stress and mental health in healthy ways in the Black community. So how can we really be surprised our youth isn't doing something that we weren't even taught? My dad, who was perhaps the kindest and most giving person I've ever known, lost his life to lung cancer last week due to decades of cigarette smoking. He smoked cigarettes to deal with stress for over 20 years because he wasn't taught healthy ways of coping stress in his youth, like we should have been taught. So oftentimes cigarettes and other unhealthy stress relievers are bought into minority-based communities at higher rates than other communities. So let's be honest. How many fancy therapy offices do you see built in communities of color? And let's be honest again. How many corner stores filled with alcohol and cigarettes do you see built within communities of color? Plenty. Not dealing with stress may have got passed down to me in my youth, but now I'm trying to break that cycle in my community. It's hard when I'm still stressing out and battling major depressive disorder, not having the adequate amount of mental health care I need, and still trying to break the negative stress cycles in my life that started when I was just a kid, while also being a recently retired caregiver by force because my father just passed away from cancer. My father helped me so much during my teens, all the way to adulthood with my own mental health, the best way he could. And that was before he even knew I had depression. But while he was fine with me looking to receive therapy or just talking about my stress in general, he never thought he needed it for himself. So you see, it really is a generational trauma thing. And until we keep talking about these issues, nothing is ever going to get done. Because mental health issues in the Black community have been looked so down upon, and it's really tragic that this way of thinking exists because the Black community's mental health is at so much more jeopardy at times when certain things are said, done, or go viral on social media. Since social media is now popular because people use it every day now, we can see traumatizing things all the time on social media when it comes to the Black community. If we're not seeing an unarmed Black man or woman being shot down by the police in viral videos, we're seeing articles where a white person has called the police on a Black person yet again for absolutely no reason. And that can take a serious toll on our mental health, especially the mental health of our Black youth. We also see Black families on social media interact with each other about mental health issues. I've actually seen a few Black families that comment on their own family's posts and tell them that you don't need to be depressed, you don't need to be suicidal, you just need to pray, you just need to be strong. And I see this all the time on social media. So it's no wonder that Black youth are either attempting or ending their lives by suicide at alarming rates. It's because we have finally reached a generation of Black youth who don't just have to endure the stigma of mental health issues in the Black community due to generational and racial trauma within the world, but they also have to constantly endure it on social media and within the news. The constant silence of mental health issues in our community has finally just taken a toll on our youth. Now, while technology and media can impact Black youth in a negative way, it can also have a very positive impact. I have invented a form of technology that is doing just that, and it's called the Safe Place app. The Safe Place is filled with helpful and informative mental health resources for the Black community, and thousands in the Black community have already downloaded the app and are seeing positive results. and learning about their mental health in our community, and just learning to talk about issues within their families. In order for the suicide rates in the Black youth to change, Black families' mindsets and lack of knowledge of mental health issues must change as well. My app can and has actually led to healthy conversations with Black parents and their children. And I know because some of them have told me. So basically all I want to say is that if we want to help our children, if we want them to have better mental health care services, if we want them to talk more about their mental health, then we have to do better. So it's not just about the task force trying to get the mental health of the Black youth together. We also have to keep in mind, if we don't talk to their parents, if their parents do not have these resources, then they are going to keep going down in this downward spiral, and we need to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gibson?
Good afternoon. First, thank you so much for having me here to share my thoughts and perspective, and to you, Congresswoman Watson Coleman, for putting together this very important task force. I initially found it because of Them We Can as a photo campaign to refute stereotypes and help young people reimagine their possibilities by educating them about trailblazers who paved the way. That was in 2013. What started out as a Black History Month project to help Black people feel seen and limitless has evolved into a one-of-a-kind digital platform that reaches millions monthly. A source of positive affirmation for Black people in a world where we are bombarded with the opposite. As much as one can argue that technology or social media is evil, I know it can be a tool for good when used to educate and empower. A young Black girl thanked me after soaking in a panel in Southeast DC last month. She told me that at the age of 9, her baby brother has 2 friends who have been shot. One died. She thanked me for Because of Them We Can and shared her mother engages with our content via social media, which led her mom to subscribe the young boy to our Black History subscription box for kids. She uses the box and the information she gathers from our site to focus his mind on the greatness that exists within instead of the unfathomable challenges that surround him. These are the types of life-saving jewels that exist as diamonds in the rough amidst the worldwide and oftentimes wild web. We should seek these jewels out and use them as resources. The good content that is on the internet should make its way to classrooms, community centers, and homes. As it relates to the goals of this task force, frontline responders should use Because of Them We Can's resources in the schools to establish connections between Black children and their history. Our resources are designed to push past stereotypical narratives of enslaved Africans to highlight the legacy of resistance and leadership. Additionally, I recommend educators and parents use our boxes to help children, youth, and young adults reimagine themselves as trailblazers, and to help them realize that they are important and special just the way they are. That is the same message that Fred Rogers shared on public television for over 31 seasons. However, in the absence of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Because of Them We Can and the digital platforms and movements like us are working to counter the messages that seek to convince Black children of otherwise. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important matter.
Thank you very much. Dr. Time?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Watson Coleman, for inviting me here today. I'm a professor of education and psychology at the University of Southern California. I'm also director of the USC Center for Empowered Learning and Development with Technology. Our research centers the histories, cultures, and development of Black youth. And by doing so, we're able to examine the unique ways that technology use can impact academic, social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. For the past 18 years, my research teams and I have tried to paint a holistic picture more positive ends, my work in Black communities has included app development camps for K-12 students. These informal classrooms have allowed me to see firsthand that technology can make students' spirits soar. I've seen the innovation and the sheer genius that can result when the only rules are be creative and be yourself. I've also studied digital spaces where Black adolescents and emerging adults create safe havens for one another and provide social support where they share information and mobilize around issues that are important to their communities. Where Black Lives Matter movement discussions revolved around dismantling systemic racism and police brutality, but also self-care and spirituality and strategies for optimal well-being, despite living in a society that seems to develop new ways almost daily to oppress and devalue Black life. I can talk about a long list of benefits to the technological opportunities provided Black youth in both traditional and informal settings, but will focus my remarks today on the perils of social media and implications for mental health among Black youth. Recent research has shown a dramatic increase in symptoms of mental health disorders in the general population among those born after 1995. Scholars have attributed this shift to the smartphone, social media, and being always on. Research has also suggested a mechanism for how social media use can impact mental health is through social comparison. That is, seeing friends put forth the best version of themselves, engaging your social and personal worth by how you may or may not measure up. Teens, for example, compare themselves to celebrities and carefully curated images of their peers with consequences that can be detrimental. But for Black youth, their social media experiences and their mental health impacts are much more complex. This is in part due to their unique position in American history and systemic anti-Black racism. On March 12, 2013, Kenyatta Parker, an honors high school student from Illinois, committed suicide by wrapping a cord 6 to 7 times around her neck and hanging herself in her garage. In her 12-page suicide note, she mentioned that she posted a video of herself dancing, fully clothed, with a slight section of her midriff showing. And some of her 5,000 Facebook friends posted things like, "You're too dark," and "You're ugly." The experience extended to school settings where people made assumptions about her sexual behavior to the point where Kenyatta believed her life was ruined. The anti-Black comments Kenyatta experienced have increased exponentially in the past decade. In our early research published in 2008, 29% of Black high school participants reported they had direct experience with online racial discrimination. By 2010, in a follow-up longitudinal study, 42% of a sample of 340 adolescents of color reported having at least one direct experience. And by the third wave, 3 years later, it was 58%. In 2018, a nationally representative survey of Black participants aged 11 to 19 showed 61.5% had been shown a racist image in the past year. When we interviewed Black participants who were ages 10 to 18 in year 1 of the 3-wave longitudinal study previously mentioned, they reported being demeaned with derogatory names, including the N-word. They also said that they were stereotyped as unintelligent, as criminals, lazy, and dirty. For example, when asked to recount their experience, a participant noted, "Well, I was on Facebook and I was scrolling on my news feed and it had a post and it said, Black people be like," and it had 3 African American people and it showed them sounding out words with a book on their lap. In addition, Black people are depicted as a scourge on the country that should not be afforded certain rights. Another participant reported it was especially during the 2012 election that people were saying that Black people and Latinos shouldn't be allowed to vote. Participants also recounted African Americans being represented as animals. For example, President Obama's face as a monkey. Perhaps most egregious is the majority group inciting and justifying violence against Black people, as well as the persistent sharing of Black bodies being lynched and nooses. Black youth also witnessed calls for genocide. This is another quote from our interviews. I was on YouTube one day watching an informational video about ethnicity and such, and someone put up a comment saying something like, "White is a superior race. All Black people should be extinct." And I was really surprised because I thought it was just a cruel joke, but it was not, because they had a paragraph explaining why Blacks are ruining the world and should go. Our studies have consistently shown that experiencing these types of racist images and messages is associated with depressive symptoms, anxiety, problem behavior, and decreased academic motivation. That is, students endorse the idea that school is important less when they experience increased online racial discrimination. This past June, we published a study in the Journal of Adolescent Health on viral videos of traumatic events online, including seeing a Black person being killed by police, beatings, arrests, and detainment. We found in the first study to do so that increased exposure to race-based trauma online is linked to depressive and PTSD symptoms. These studies highlight a need for additional research and for professionals who serve African Americans, from teachers, counselors, and researchers to those creating curricula and digital tools for their use to be culturally competent. If more grants were awarded to culturally competent researchers, Kenyatta might have been exposed to an intervention that would help her to cope with and critique the messages she received online. If more teachers, counselors, and administrators had a deep understanding of Black youth's histories, cultures, and development, and allowed students to talk about their online experiences in the classroom or the counselor's office, Kenyatta might be with us today. Thank you. I want to express my gratitude again to the Congressional Black Caucus, to Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman for inviting me to speak. And my remarks today were made on behalf of the STEVE Fund, which is dedicated to supporting the mental health and emotional well-being of young people of color, including college students, through conferences, programs, and services, technical assistance, and promotion of the use of mental health-focused technology.
Thank you, Dr. I'm going to start with a few questions, and then my colleague will, and we may, kind of work off of one another. I've heard a couple of things that trouble me tremendously. At some point I want to get to you, Ms. Pierre. I want to ask, I see these images that you're talking about. I'm exposed every day to these racist, violent, vile images, and I get pissed. Help me to understand how we're failing our children, that their response shouldn't be to just be pissed and not get sucked up into it and believe that it has value over who they are or what they are. And I will take a response from you, Doctor, and from you, Ms. Gibson and Ms. Pierre, if you have something to share here. I think that that's very important. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, I see it. I scroll through Facebook every day. And sometimes I just have to get off of it because I'm so angry. But what are we missing with our Kenyatta Parker, who was a teenager, and someone else, and even Ms. Pierre, someone that you may have been speaking to? What are we missing here?
We're missing quite a lot. We aren't training mental health professionals to be culturally competent and anti-racist. Teachers don't have to take any courses on Black children, their development or their histories, their cultures, so they come in the classroom and their focus is a lot of times discipline, or their, the lessons, I think that they aren't challenged, and so, they're often bored out of their mind in these classrooms, and it gets mistaken for other things. They get, just because of the way they walk, they get recommended for special education, and of course, they're not being challenged there. I've been trying to get an intervention that would help students to be able to critique and cope with the messages that they get about their race online for about 10 years now. And I think we're failing youth by not funding research and innovative interventions that could actually help.
Thank you. Ms. Gibson, you have something?
Yes, to Dr. Tyner's point, I definitely believe that the absence of funding for research and culturally competent teachers is significantly important. I also think that for Black children, the absence of curriculum around their history is also important. I think that when we look at Black youth and when they're able to see themselves in a positive light in school, it's usually relegated to Black History Month, 28 days. And I believe that a large part of what I do is because I believe that you can't be what you can't see. And there are so many positive examples of great African Americans and Black people doing amazing things, and there's a disconnect between those individuals and the birthright that young people believe they have because those messages aren't reinforced in schools. I spent 12 years in school learning about American history and didn't find out about Black Wall Street and Zora Neale Hurston and some of the Harlem Renaissance until I got to college. And Frederick Douglass said that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And I believe that a way that we build strong children is by giving them a connection to their rich history.
You were the chief. That's you. Okay.
I also wanted to make a point about what they both said because you're both right. And I also feel like the fact that these mental health care professionals really don't know much about Black youth when it comes to mental health issues because, as I said in my testimony, I started seeing a mental health professional when I was just 18 years old, and they didn't even diagnose me. So I feel like we really have a lack of just care when it comes to Black youth, because I feel like the first time I tried to attempt suicide, I should have been diagnosed. And I also feel like the fact that we wait until all these children are attempting to end their lives by suicide or ending their lives, that's when we care. We need to have the resources beforehand. And even piggybacking and saying about how the images are on social media and even in the school systems, it really makes me upset on social media when we see certain images. But I've heard that, I'm not sure if this is true, but I've heard that some Black organizations have had their pages either banned or like comments deleted when they want to talk about certain issues. But if you see a Black person hanging from a noose or something like that, that's not going to get taken down automatically. And I feel like that even the people who have these social media platforms that are so large, they need to do a better job of protecting Black youth and the Black community in general when it comes to
That's the really important part. I want to talk to you about your revealing your story, but I want to just say that I want to get back to you because it was your because we can app that my understanding was presents these positive affirmations, but then when you click onto it, there are other things like Black History subscriptions, and I wanted to know the kind of resources that are available on that kind of app.
Yes.
And how does one find out about that kind of app?
Yeah, so some of I brought one of the original pictures from the campaign when we first launched for 28 days during Black History Month. So there are a couple of things that are available via Because of Them We Can. And it's a digital platform. It's online at becauseofthemwecan.com. And we also operate on Facebook and Instagram, which is where we reach typically millions of people every single month. And so there is an elevation of positive content. And so we believe that you don't have to be a celebrity to be celebrated. And that kind of counters what the children believe. And so what we do is we amplify positive stories. It doesn't matter who it's about, if it's a Black child, a Black adult, a senior citizen, doesn't matter. If it's positive, it's an uplifting, it's enriching, we amplify it. There's also a Black History subscription box, and we saw school systems in Wisconsin engaging in the box and buying it and putting it into school systems. And what it does is it gives the kids props and apparel to help them transform. And so this month the kids transformed into Betsy Coleman, and they learned about the first African American woman pilot. Last month it was Stevie Wonder. The month before that they learned about Black Wall Street and HBCUs. And so it helps them to really connect to these individuals. And it's not just Black kids who get it, because it's equally important that their peers understand their value as well. And then there are videos. And so we see teachers and professionals using the videos in schools to teach about the history and engage the young people in critical questions to help them to see themselves in their shoes and to also understand their potential to make an impact in the world as well.
Thank you. It's good to have Dr. Herb Conaway here, because in addition to the fact that he is a practicing physician, he's also a senior member of the state legislature, and for him to hear some of these things, I'm sure that New Jersey will hear about them in the next couple of days. I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, a couple of questions to you, Ms. Pierre, and then I'm going to share. Because you all have just sparked a lot of questions in me. Ms. Pierre, you were kind enough and courageous enough to share your story. I have a couple of questions regarding your story. You said that your first instinct to commit suicide was at the age of 9, but your first attempt was at 18. Did you respond to crisis activities, events? Was this something that sort of crept up onto you? Did you in any way communicate these weird, unfulfilled feelings, scary stuff to your parents?
I didn't tell my parents about any of my mental health struggles, just because I didn't know back then I didn't know that that's what that was. I just knew that I had those thoughts. But
why did you not tell anyone? Did you think?
I was ashamed. I was ashamed because that's all I've heard all my life, that Black people don't go through mental health issues. So when I found out that I was having mental health issues, I was like, well, I thought that we weren't supposed to go through them, so what's going on? And that made me not get help even further for a longer time, because we weren't taught about it. And I didn't talk to my parents, but mental health issues and stress actually runs in my family. And many of my family members who had either mental health issues or stress, they didn't seek help, which is why I mentioned my father and his cigarette smoking. Because we always have these unhealthy ways of coping, I feel, in the Black community that that's when I say, if suicide doesn't kill us, then there's other ways that can kill us. There's cigarettes, there's stress. There are so many different ways that people don't know that can physically harm us when it comes to mental health issues, and I think that's really important for people to know.
And your Safe Place Act?
The Safe Place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does it do?
So the Safe Place is basically, it was established last year that was 2018 Black History Month. That's when it first came out on Android and iPhone. It's free to download, and it's basically just a lot of different information and resources when it comes to mental health in the Black community, because I've seen a lot of mental health apps. There's tons of mental health apps, but I didn't really see any that talked about police brutality and how racism affects mental health and how all the things that Black people have gone through without history. People don't realize that stuff still goes down from generation to generation and still affects us to this day. So I just talk a lot about things that go on in the Black community. I give information about mental health issues. There's questions that you can ask yourself and you can ask a mental health care professional, just to get you more familiar with how mental health issues and the way that they work, because I didn't realize I was going through these issues because I never read about them. As soon as I started reading, as soon as I started seeing the signs and the symptoms, things started to make sense to me. And I didn't realize a lot of us don't have those resources. So it was important to me to do that, because I've struggled with mental health issues basically my entire life, and I'm tired of seeing these children ending their lives when I know that something can be done about it, but a lot of people just don't seem to care, and we need more people that care.
Thank you. At some point before you leave here, we're going to talk about the responsibility of these large platforms to ensure that they are sensitive to the impact of this information that's getting to our kids. What should they be doing? But right now, I'd like to hand this off to Representative Horsford. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I want to first commend you for your leadership and chairing this important emergency task force for the Congressional Black Caucus and the work that you are doing to bring together these experts and panels and perspectives. This is probably more of the substantive work that this Congress really needs to be doing to really address problems that impact people rather than some of the other stuff that tends to occupy our time. I first want to say to Ms. Pierre, I'm very sorry for your loss of your father. And he has to be extremely proud of the woman he has raised and the contributions that you are making to help other people. The fact that you are so courageous and brave enough to share your experience is to be commended. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry for your loss. I'd like to ask, and I downloaded your great information, and like you said, it's very tailored to the needs of the Black community. How would you like to see applications like yours incorporated into our schools, into youth organizations? How do you feel like it could be utilized and incorporated so that it reaches the children and the families that need it most?
Well, I feel it's really important that first we have more conversations about mental health in schools, because even when I was still in high school, I heard about certain mental health issues that went on, like with people that were my age at that time. But it's like we never talked about that kind of stuff in school. And we had guidance counselors, but a lot of times you don't even feel like you can go to your guidance counselor to talk to them about certain things. So I feel, first of all, we need to have better conversations. And when we have conversations and assemblies where all the kids can get together, or even separately if they need to talk, you can start giving them those kind of resources, and not just to them, but also their parents. Because, as I said before, if they don't go home and talk to their parents, talk to their parents about these issues, I feel like it's really not going to do a lot of good, because their mom or their dad can go back and say, well, no, we don't need those kind of resources. That's not how we were raised. We don't need therapists. So I feel like it's really important, not only for the teachers and the administration at school to get together, but also the parents. It's like it's a gap that needs to be bridged together. So I really feel like we have a long way to go, but it can get done.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Same question.
Thank you. My thoughts are, as far as Because of Them We Can is concerned, we do have resources as far as videos and curriculum online, but also I'm a strong believer in this box that we've created, and there's an access barrier. And that access barrier is due to funding. Some parents can't afford to pay $30 a month to get their kids this type of information. And I think about when Fred Rogers came and he testified about the importance of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. He was able to run for 31 seasons because he got funding. And that's how he was able to make an impact with so many kids at the preschool age. And I was one of those children, right? And I believe that programs or tools like that should have the support of this body, should have the support of organizations who can make it possible to get that type of information into the hands of our young people. I believe that learning should be fun, it should be engaging. Our boxes are very fun and engaging, but they're also constructed from an activity standpoint according to Common Core standards. because we know that that's what's required for the schools to be able to adopt this and for the kids to have reading exercises and math exercises that can coincide with them learning Black history. And so I believe that the more we can normalize Black history and Black excellence outside of Black History Month for these Black babies, brown babies, and children of all races, I believe that it will help to impact how they see themselves and how they counter the messages that they see online when they come into their space.
I'd love to follow up with you. My home state of Nevada, we actually did, through our legislature, mandate cultural competence-based curriculum, African American centric curriculum to be incorporated throughout our school system. Thank you to our state superintendent and the folks that are now carrying out that. Dr. Brindisha Times, thank you for your work as a researcher and a professor. My wife's a professor as well, and so I commend those who are in academia and trying to bring your work into the policy space, because so often what we are doing is not informed by the research. So I'd like to ask you about your study and of the traumatic events online, which found that viewing viral videos of police racial violence is related to depressive and PTSD symptoms. First, and I know the chairwoman wants to go into this later, what responsibility do social media tech companies have in this process, and should some of this material be taken down? And can you say more about how you think additional funding could address the problem of Black youth suicide and mental health?
So I think that the platforms should be able to stem the tide of online hate, right? They should provide resources for people to report their experiences with online racial discrimination or any sort of online harassment for, LGBTQ populations, reporting sexism. We should have better ways to report, and they should have better ways to actually, moderate some of the content, because the job we're doing right now is failing. Although people are trying, I think we need more cultural competence. And without it, like a lot of the efforts that we see, these bots that they're creating, they'll keep getting it wrong. And so I think my research, I don't want for the main outcome of my study to be that people think, well, we should stop watching the videos. What we should do is prepare ourselves for them. We should have, sort of the settings on our social media so that they don't automatically play when we're scrolling, right? So we have control over when we see the video. So I stopped for a while watching the police killings because I had some emotional issues, like all of us, right? And my nephew sent me a video of Philando Castile, being shot, and it caught me off guard, and sort of start feeling those emotions again. And so if people have control over when they see them, I think they can ground themselves and sort of be spiritually prepared for what they're going to see. I don't think we need to take them off social media, because these people have to be held accountable. And even with the videos, we see that they aren't, right? And so we want more people to feel like they can record the videos and post them, because it needs to be it needs to be sort of what's happening needs to be shown to the public. We need to be critiquing it. We need to, people who are, the police brutality needs to be called out. Your last question.
Funding. But
Funding.
just, if we can maybe just stay on that, because we can maybe come back to the funding, because I actually think this is a really important area that we really can do something about, and I know between the leadership of the chair, and there's also a CDC task force on tech, that we're constantly meeting with these companies. So the idea would be to kind of set up preferences by which the content that you're receiving as a consumer, you're determining ahead of time what you're opting into, and you can always see and download at your discretion, but so that it's not automatically posting on your Instagram or Facebook.
Exactly. So that's sort of one strategy that they could all sort of adopt, but then also the moderators.
But a parent could, and I want to do that for my daughter who's 12 years old.
Yeah.
Because she's on these sites and I know she's downloading content, but I want to be able to help control the type of content that she's exposed to as well.
Absolutely.
But we don't have those tools as parents, as consumers, because the companies don't set it up, and we have to have a discussion with these companies about their role and the accountability they need to play in this whole process. So you're giving us good suggestions that we can take to them, and whether it requires legislation or whether it requires guilting them into doing the right thing.
So here's the issue. We need people who are culturally competent. So if they're not culturally competent, they could implement all the new tools, use all the AI bots, the bots that they have trying to control hate speech. If the people creating these tools aren't culturally competent, we won't have any change, right? They will basically start to, basically identify hate speech that's not hate speech, right? It's just Black people talking to each other, right? And so, we have to be aware of the extensive training that it requires to be able to, create a bot, to be able to implement strategies that will protect, people who are most likely victimized from by online hate.
We're actually having these hearings right now in Homeland Security about the role of these large platforms. And I'm not familiar with this a notion of a tool that censors for yourself. I'd like to know more about it, what you're going to see. But it's the other things like, and it's not just sort of police brutality or the lack of law enforcement, but it's just language and other kinds of posts that there's nothing on it that says, this is not fake news, but this is graphic material, and it may incite you, it might upset you. We're not supporting it. We have a responsibility not to diminish the right freedom of speech. So we got to find that balance. But having this tool, or these tools, is certainly one of them. Having notifications is certainly another. And if anybody has any other ideas, you said something about your app. Your app costs $30. Whose app costs $30?
My boxes.
Your boxes.
Boxes.
Oh, okay, the boxes.
And
Right. So the way they become free is that they become part of a curriculum.
correct.
Mm.
With the censoring, Instagram does a good job of that, with images and videos, not necessarily with copy. But if you're scrolling Instagram and they detect that it is a image that is graphic in nature, it will blur the image and it'll tell you this image is graphic in nature, and then you can consciously make a decision to tap to view it. I don't believe I've seen that on Facebook yet, but I do know that Instagram has started, and that could potentially be a model when it comes to censoring some of those triggering images that cross our feeds.
And that works really well with the tools in families like the congressman here and other families that are sort of intact families that pay attention, really pay attention to what their children are seeing. But we need to figure out something that kind of protects those who don't have the protection at home. And so we'd be interested in those ideas. I want to do something that we don't generally do. We have a very hard-working and very professional, outstanding work group that's helping us here, so that we can get our report out and our recommendations. And so we have 3 members, Dr. Prim, Dr. Conway, and Dr. Lindsay, who is the head of the group, here today. And I'd like to ask them if they would come up. And I want to give them a chance to have an engagement with you, to have at least a few minutes, because we're learning from them as well, and they're going to ask some questions that perhaps we wouldn't have even thought of. So Dr. Lindsay, Dr. Prim, and Dr. Conway, if you would come on up. Come on down. You know, you might as well come up here where the microphones are. I'd like to start with Dr. Lindsay, who is our group leader. And I want our group leaders to understand that we still have some more questions to get.
First of all, I want to again thank the Congresswoman and Congressman for engaging this conversation that is critical to our community. Members of the working group, thank you for your support. I'm very curious about something that I've uncovered in my interviews with moms who have had a son complete suicide, a son between the age of 5 and 12 years old. Something has come up a couple of times in those interviews, and this issue is around these sub-communities that are happening online. One of the moms told me that she discovered that her son had one profile that she knew about on Instagram, and there was another profile that she had no idea about until there was some discovery of his sort of online programming and stuff after he passed. And so, do you know anything about this? Because apparently, from what this mom indicated, he was watching things that were inappropriate or had access to information that, you know, we would not want our children to partake in. And so my question is about, again, do you know anything about this? Are there opportunities for regulation? And then back to what Congressman Horsford was saying, what about the sort of regulation or at least monitoring of your child's behavior? How much is sufficient? What is some kind of baseline in terms of that monitoring that should happen?
So when we ask adolescents about their social media profiles, they are usually talking about the main profile that the public sees, not the ones, you know, right? And so it's been really difficult for us to get at what might be happening with these secondary profiles that people are creating, but we know it does happen. And so in future work, we'll be asking about whether people have these secondary or other profiles and why they use them, and then sort of trying to understand more of the experience and what they're posting on those sites that they're not posting, right, on their main profiles. When it comes to monitoring, I always say sort of what Jasmine mentioned. You want to, as a parent, be a safe place for your kids to talk about the good things that are happening on social media as well as the bad things. They shouldn't fear that their technology will be taken away if they tell parents about something negative that's happening. And so if you're a safe place for your kid, you know, you have these open lines of communication, and you know, something comes up, right? They're more likely to run to mom or dad, right, than you know, somebody at school, or sometimes even friends, right? And so I think that's sort of the first line of defense. Also with monitoring, it's sort of, one thing you could do is talk to your kids about what they think is, you know, a good sort of plan for them for their social media use, or you know their screen time, right? And so it's this collaborative, kind of discussion and coming to sort of a sort of a diet or plan for their use, right? And they're, you know, they're open with their parents about what they're doing, and they share and have some control, right, over what's happening to them.
So I actually had a constituent outreach on this topic, social media, and it was targeted to parents. This was the scariest thing that the parents shared. And what it was is that they didn't feel informed enough about how social media works to even set the boundaries. We had the local law enforcement come in and talk about the dark web and the dark social media posts and all of what's happening where on the sites where kids are at and you juveniles are at and where predators are at, and parents don't know anything about it. So I feel like we need a guide for parental use and training for parents on the social media, because we assume because they have access to it that they know how to use it, and they don't. And we can't keep up with it as much as it's evolving. So, you know, I agree that parents have to play a role, but they can only play so much of a role if they're informed about what the tools are and how they operate. And then, as you said, you have the publicly available platforms, and then you have all these dark platforms, which that's probably a whole nother discussion.
Actually, also, I didn't mention this, but we also know that there is a foreign country that is at war with Black Americans.
Yep.
And, you know, misinformation, the sort of trying to, you know, divide the country, inciting sort of negative attitudes towards Black people. These people are learning African American English, right? And trying to integrate themselves into our platforms. Luckily, if you're a native African American English speaker, you catch them. It's like, they tried it. But, you know, they still, like, people who aren't a part of our community, right, think that these are African Americans, right, who are on social media platforms. And so that's another sort of thing that we need to grapple with, that parents need to understand as we move forward. And we can, I'd love to stay in touch so we can have more conversations about it.
So to answer your question, Dr. Lindsay, I do know some teens who have had 2 separate pages, And it made me think about what I said earlier about how when some Black teens do try to talk about how they're feeling on their regular page, they'll have family members that tell them a completely different thing and not to worry about it and just undermining their feelings. So that's why a lot of these kids have separate pages, because they figure, well, my mom or dad's not going to know about this, because you're right, they don't know about all that technology and how social media works. There was so many times I had to help my parents just learn stuff on their phone. So social media is a whole different ball game when it comes to that, and I really do feel like the parents do need some kind of guide. You are exactly right, to help them figure out social media better, because there are a lot of parents that do care, but they just don't know. They don't know about it, so they just need more guidance into how social media works and how the dark social media works, because it is out there.
Can I say something? I have 3 kids, ages 10, 7, and 2. And I remember when we first started signing up for Facebook, there was a requirement you had to be in college to be able to get a Facebook account. I see no reason my 5-year-old needs an Instagram account or a Facebook account. And the age range that you stated was 5 to 12 years old. And I do think that there needs to be some exploratory research and conversation around an age requirement implemented by these platforms for these young people. Because it's just like, you can argue that there are great things that happen at a club, and there are not some great things that can happen at a club. I look at these platforms in the same way. There's an age requirement for entry. And I think that when Facebook was relegated to people who went to school and then they kind of opened it up based on age, it was still, interesting, but it was controlled interesting. And so I think that that's something that the committee should also look into.
We have been joined by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, but I'd very much like to have Dr. Prim ask her a question and Dr. Conaway ask her a question, and then the great give us a target. Dr. Prim.
Yes, I wanted to ask a question. If a youth has been bullied online, what should a family member or what should parents do to help them in the aftermath of that, hopefully to prevent the negative psychological fallout, some of which you all have alluded to?
So, first, I would recommend making sure that the person's sense of self is intact, sort of reminding them of who they are, what family they came from, who their ancestors are, and sort of grounding them in that strength that comes from family. And then sort of talking through exactly what happened and what feelings are resulting from those experiences. And again, being able to share exactly how they're feeling. If they're feeling sad, if they're having, these symptoms of depression, feeling safe to mention that they're having those feelings, and safe in their peer groups, safe in their families, safe in the classroom, right? I think a lot of times schools will say, that what happens online should stay online, but there needs to be space where people can have conversations about bullying that takes place online. In some instances, you have like digital citizenship week where people will talk about bullying and how it's wrong, but it needs to be all year round that people can have conversations about bullying, calling people out who might be these online bullies if they're in their schools, and sort of exposing what's happening and making the people who are experiencing the bullying sort of feel valued and like they belong to the school community.
I think that was such a great question you asked, because I feel like a lot of the suicides I've seen this year has been because of bullying. And I feel like a lot of times the parents, well, black parents in general, have said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And we need to do a better job, like Dr. Tyne said, letting the child express themselves. How did it make them feel, and actually doing something about it? Because I've seen a lot of the bullying related to the schools and another student, but like if it is off campus, sometimes they really don't want to deal with it, but that's still an issue because they still have to go back to school with that person. So I feel like there needs to be a lot more conversations, not with just the parents and the child, but if it is school related, get the administrators together, let them all talk about it and actually act on it. Because I've heard stories where there were bullying in schools and they knew about it, and they might have had a conference and come together and talk about it, but nothing was ever done. And there have been children who have ended their life because of that. So I think that's a very serious thing to take in. Like, we really need to do a better job of not just talking to the kids about it, but actually doing something to stop the bullying, because I don't see enough of that.
Thank you. Dr. Conway?
Well, thank you for raising some important issues about the role of parents. It seems to me that technology has gotten ahead of the skills, the acquisition of parenting skills to deal with their children and their interaction on social media. And you raised the question of how to control this. And one thing that always, most children don't have access to a credit card. Most children could not respond to questions that are being used today to give people online access to credit. And so that if a transaction or some online access to credit, iterative responses were applied to these accounts, you could then stop an underage child from getting access to one of these accounts. Of course, it does have homeland security implications. We've seen that people have been recruited to leave their country and attack the United States by exposure to these online vehicles, these tools. And so it's a homeland security issue, and it's certainly more, just as important in my view, as an issue of security for our children. You have some comments on how parents can actually control access to media. And I'll say this one last thing. It is my understanding that it's not just the social media companies, but the cell phone companies do have the ability to block information coming into those phones on an ad hoc basis as requested. Now, it's not required, they don't set it up, but they have the ability to do that. And what would you say about a mechanism that will allow parents to say, this cell phone is not going to be available to take any social media streams during school hours or at certain times, or any of these kinds of things, so that parents can actually be empowered and in control of the exposures that these social media exposures that come to their children.
So I think for early adolescence and of course for children, and we know that children are accessing these platforms, 10-year-olds, 9-year-olds are accessing the platforms, even though many of them say you have to be at least 13. And so the monitoring and being able to install sort of filters and things like that, I think it could be valuable based on individual family needs. But as adolescents, get older, right? I think more discussions need to take place rather than trying to control, what they have access to on these platforms, right? And so I'm sort of not for, completely controlling what they're doing. They need to have some freedoms, right? And this is where everybody at school is. And so I'm for helping the children to critique what they see, helping them to reflect and be mindful of their social media use, so you don't have to worry about a filter sort of getting it wrong or controlling, them feeling like, their parents are watching them at all times.
Thank you, Dr. Times, and you can't stop them from sharing either. Excuse me, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Thank you very much. I feel like I'm in a chair that is practically on the ground.
Dr.
Pardon? Yeah.
Here.
Nobody has to move, I'm fine. I think I'm gonna go down to the front there. I just feel like I'm sitting on the floor. That'll give me time to get my question out.
No, let me sit here for a minute. Go ahead. Ask your questions. Please, please.
Sorry about that. Can you see me?
Yes.
I really don't. Let me thank the doctors who've made their pointed questions. I may be a little different in my approach. I do want to thank all of you for your excellence, Congressman Horsewood, and the leader of our effort. We're so grateful to her for her bringing together issues that we can then parlay into legislative action. We hope with your advocacy and the advocacy of so many others. I was just struck by the story of Kenyatta Parker. I think that's in Ms. Time's testimony, and the words that have come to young people, and I'm sure that they have been questions have been soundly answered or asked and answered, but let me, if you would beg my pardon, begin to try and analyze. There is a hearing downstairs that is dealing with tech companies. There's a series of hearings in judiciary on the question of are the tech companies too big, and how do you get your hands around this huge economic engine. We know that the FCC, as I recall, has just gotten a $5 billion settlement from Facebook. So the question is, legislation is important, but what could these entities craft to deal with by way of investment, by way of constructive response? What would have helped, and everyone that can answer the Kenyatta story, honest graduate student from Illinois, I guess they heard wrapping the cord 6 times around her neck and hanging herself in the garage. In her 12th grade suicide note, she mentioned that she posted a video of herself dancing fully clothed with a slight section of her midriff showing, and some of her 5,000 Facebook friends posted things like, "You're too dark and you're too ugly." That's piercing for a teenager, but we can imagine other things being said. But how do we, in the opinion of the community, begin to say to Facebook and others, I don't want to call their name, and others, Twitter accounts, etc., Instagram, and others, and I know that people here will call their names. Here's how you can construct a Marshall Plan, or as I say in every place I go, here's how you can construct something in response to HR 40, Commission to Study Reparations. Here's how you can repair this. The second question is that we've had a series of, there are some cities that will say to you that's, we have how many numbers killed every weekend, but in Houston we've had a series of tragic killings of those under 10. So I was at a funeral of a 2-year-old who was shot point blank in front of his dad of some group that was either robbing or had some relationship, but probably gang related as we, and I'm not going to demonize, I am going to say that I am fed up of little babies being killed. So, number two would be, does anyone think that there's some involvement in the now modern day gangs in their engagement with social media? And is there anything restorative that social media can do for what law enforcement tells us is the same 800,000 gang members in the nation repetitively doing the same thing over and over again, which is violent, causing people to lose their lives, causing their peers to lose their lives, in a repairing way? I would be interested in helping psychologists and psychiatrists. You don't answer everything with a dollar, but maybe in a repairing manner. The first question that I asked, the second question that I asked in this certain population of individuals. And I'm mixing my work in the Judiciary Criminal Justice Committee with this whole concept of mental health, but I yield to all of you.
So I'll start with your second question because Desmond Patton at Columbia University is doing some really interesting work around games on social media and how they express emotion. Desmond Patton, Dr. Desmond Patton. And he's thinking about sort of tools that we can use to stem the tide of gang violence. And so I think he would be a great person to talk to. I don't have any data on gangs, but and I could share this work with you as well. In terms of thinking about what social media platforms can do, I think so. Their responsibility. I think part of it is to flag when there's some type of hate. And we know that hate there's intersections, right, with race, gender, sexual orientation, right? And so in order for them to implement strategies or tools that are meaningful, we were saying before that people designing the tools have to be culturally competent. Otherwise, they'll miss the mark every time, right? We talked about these bots that they create. They're supposed to stem the tide of online hate speech, but it's catching when people are just talking and going about their normal day, right? When Black people, have conversations about, whatever, their everyday lives, right? Their culture, their music, right? Sometimes the bot might flag, things that actually aren't hate speech. And so we need more folks designing the tools to be culturally competent, and that is not an easy thing. It's not a matter of, we're gonna have this one day of, diversity training, right? It takes years to be able to understand, racial issues, cultural issues, specific to each, racial ethnic minority group. And so they need to bring on board more people who are culturally competent to help them to design the technology. And, sorry. That's the first step.
Can I get the other two things? And thank you, Madam Chair.
My suggestion would be in the algorithms as well, as far as how this information is amplified. And so I forget the name of the rule that Facebook recently implemented, but I know that they're trying to do something around limiting the amplification of what they deem to be fake news. But on the other side, I think that they can do something to amplify the good news. I do believe that there should be something as far as algorithms, reach, preference, etc. when it comes to news feeds that looks for certain keywords, certain sentiments, when it pertains stories that are positive enriching in nature and uplifting, because we know that we're often inundated with the fight videos, and that's because Facebook gives preference to those in the news feed, and so if you engage with it, it's in your news feed, then it's going to continue to bubble up. And I think that that preference needs to shift over to some of the imagery that we know that our children need to be inundated with more often than not.
Thank you.
I have a question for you first. For your first question that you asked, what was the young lady's name one more time?
Yeah, she was in Ms. Tynes' testimony,
Kenyatta Parker.
and her name was Kenyatta Parker.
And she was bullied and said that she was too dark.
Yeah, she put her image on her Facebook with 5,000 friends, and she had on a midriff, and I guess she was feeling good and showing, and it said, posted things like, "You're too dark and you're ugly." And in her 12-page suicide note, she mentioned that she posted a video of herself dancing, fully clothed, and that these things came up. Made assumptions about her sexual behavior to the point where Kenyatta believed her life was ruined. So, she believed that was going to just carry through the social media network, what had been said about her.
I really want to focus on this particular question for a really particular reason. And I feel like Dr. Tynes really said a really accurate statement when we need more people of diversity who are in charge of. I feel like on Facebook and Instagram, I research about social media and stuff, and I don't see a lot of people that look like us behind the scenes. So I really think, first of all, that is really important, that we need to have more people that look like us. And we need more safe places on social media ran by us. Like, as for me, I have the Safe Place app, but I'm also very vocal on social media, on the Safe Place, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I talk about how it's okay to love your natural hair, how it's okay to love your dark skin, because I feel like a lot of these young children aren't hearing that enough. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why she ended her life by suicide. She probably didn't hear that she was beautiful enough. She probably didn't hear that her skin color was beautiful. So I really feel like that we really need to have those safe places where we could just talk about those issues together, because we can have diversity training like Dr. Tynes said, but that's only a lot of times maybe a day, maybe a weekend, but we have people who have lived this their entire lives and they understand better. So I really think it's important to have those like the Safe Place. I have a group for the Safe Place on Facebook where a lot of people in the Black community, even like teens, are able to talk about colorism and stuff that has happened in their youth. So I really feel like if we're going to get past the social media bullying when it comes to colorism and racism and stuff like that, we really need to have leaders who are willing to have places like that where they do feel safe.
Thank you so very much for your courtesy.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Congresswoman, can I raise an app? There's an app called Not Okay app.
Not Okay app.
Not Okay app. The Not Okay app was developed by two teenagers. I believe they're from Atlanta, Georgia. And when you talk about what could we have done for Kenyatta, that's a resource that when she felt like she wasn't okay, and when she started constructing that 12-page letter, she would have been able to send a signal through that act to interested parties who could have intervened and reaffirmed her. And so I think it's a great resource to look into. Again, it was created by two teenagers to help curtail suicide amongst Black youth, and it's to throw a signal to let people know, like, hey, I'm struggling with something, I'm not okay, I might harm myself at this point.
Thanks, Ms. Dixon. You've mentioned some things, and one of the things that keeps coming back to me, in addition to the cultural competence and, who's the diversity and who's doing the algorithms and all that kind of stuff, is how do we get this information out that these apps exist and that you have access to them and get people to have ownership of them, grow with them. And we need to talk about that some more. This has really been I wish we had more time. This has been a very rich exchange, and I thank you so much for coming and for sharing the work that you're doing in each of these areas and your personal stories. All of this is going to help our work team, our study team, to bring forth recommendations, findings, and solutions then that's what we're looking for, so that we can have an impact on this. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. And for our members and for members of our work group, thank you for taking your time. I have a very busy schedule. With that, we're adjourned.